What's up, music fans of the internet? I'm Kevin.
I'm Derek.
And together we are last week's album, The Only Reviews, with two different views. And in this episode, we're talking about the new album by Greys called Outer Heaven and exploring the big question, do Greys achieve enlightened noise rock on Outer Heaven? So let's get into it. Cheers, Derek, and everyone at home.
Cheers, Kevin, everyone at home.
Greys are a quartet based in Toronto that mixes post-hardcore, noise rock, and punk. They formed in 2011. They've released 4 EPs and 1 full-length album, if anything, and this, Outer Heaven, is their second album. And they claimed here that their focus is to figure out, quote, how to make the noise more melodic and make the melodies more dissonant. So with that, let's talk about what it sounds like. Derek, what do you think?
Kevin, I think Greys sounds like sleigh bells and girl band get together and have a little baby Fugazi. Aren't you cute, little baby Fugazi?
I think this sounds like Nirvana, the Jesus Lizard, and Sonic Youth get reincarnated. Let's get into some highlights. Derek, what did you think?
The unpredictability of it all worked really well. I think it made for just a really engaging listen. It really kept you guessing what was going to happen next.
Yeah, the element of surprise is definitely one of the highlights here. I think they do a good use of dynamics.
There's never any real repetition, if you will, either. So everything really seemed to kind of stand on its own.
And I would agree, none of it really sounds the same. But I would argue that they use repetition sort of within songs, a lot of times in the opening or in the verses to sort of lull you into this complacency before it goes into this all-out rager.
A single track took on maybe 3 different shades in once. It still somehow a lot of times came together at the end with all these different shades or elements coming together into this big mishmash of sound.
Dynamically, I think they do a good job of like from soft to loud, from fast to slow, noise to melody, all those different juxtapositions they make work together really, really well. The other thing I think they did tastefully and sparingly, they used some effects like tape loops and some other sonic effects. A lot of times in punk and rock, there's this sort of attitude that you've got to record it all to tape and you can't overdub it later. And I think they sort of do a really good job of playing with that idea.
I think you're right. It was tastefully done and it didn't jump out at you.
Were there any specific tracks that you thought were highlights or standouts?
I kind of liked Cruelty. I think this one kind of lulled you into the album. The lyrics are taken from a news story about a child who was brutally murdered, terrible things. But I think that type storyline mixed with this kind of seemingly pleasing shoegaze jam creates just a discord in itself from an overall thematic standpoint.
It's funny you say that because on first listen, I was like, that's a terrible first track for this band. It's such a misnomer. But then after repeat listens, I was like, oh, I get it. Well done, Greys. I see what you did there.
What track stood out to you?
I really liked No Star. I thought it was a great build into an all-out rager with that sort of repetitive opening. Then this barrage of drums and vocals and guitar bursts out of nowhere. Also, Complaint Rock, which besides being my new favorite music genre, it tossles between the sort of loud wailing punk and more chill atmospheric instrumental really nicely. Also some really witty lyrics that poke fun at slacktivism and just powerful in its juxtaposition of sounds and overall, I thought, composition.
The instrumental kind of seemed like hazy surf rock a little bit. You don't hear that often from a Toronto-based band.
What about Lowlights? Was there anything you didn't think worked, Derek?
This is going to sound nitpicky, but on Sorcerer, there was kind of this meandering, pounded piano that just kind of broke the spell for me. A little too indulgent for the sake of making noise.
I have a few Lowlights. Track-wise, Strange World. Couldn't find the melodies in that one. And then on Erosion, sonically it was good. Lyrically, it felt like just another breakup song. Didn't seem as interesting. They hit a lot of really interesting topics with their lyrics, from racism to mental health, some really deep stuff. And that one in particular felt a little too light. And then My Life as a Cloud. I didn't think they went out too strongly. I was really expecting them to go out with a bang.
I think they're really heady in that regard, and they would build this, lyrical landscape, but then maybe leave you longing for a little bit more musically, to remind us all again that we're goddamn humans and we're not robots.
Yeah, as you talk about it, I think the sound of that song actually definitely plays into the concept of it. I was just expecting, especially these guys, to rage towards the end.
Of course, that's a cool thing, is that they built such an expectation.
Yeah.
I don't want to say they're toying with listeners, but they're really thought-evoking.
With that, let's talk about overall rating and answering the big question: do these guys achieve enlightened noise rock on this album? Derek, what do you think?
One thing that came to my mind a lot was John Lithgow's character from Footloose yelling something along the lines of, "That's not music. It's so loud, I can't think." Well, I think it's certainly loud music that will make you think. Yes, Grace certainly achieves enlightened noise rock on Outer Heaven here. They really match topics along with these sounds, which is really intriguing. The unpredictability that was steeped throughout the album turns every corner. It was very memorable overall. So I'm giving this one a 4 out of 5.
Right on. I had a sneaking suspicion by the color of your shirt that you liked this album by Graze.
Yeah, I was trying to be as heady as these guys. I'm probably not succeeding.
Does Graze achieve enlightened noise rock on their new album, Outer Heaven? I think absolutely. They're definitely pushing themselves to be more thoughtful and artful, and it's paying off in spades. They mix hardcore and shoegaze and grunge and noise and all these other things in really interesting ways. So I agree with you, Derek. I'm going to give this one a 4 out of 5 as well. So that makes an 8 out of 10. Let us know what you think about it. And don't forget to subscribe to us here at Last Week's Album, either on YouTube or the podcast. I'm Kevin.
I'm Derek.
We'll see you next time, guys. Cheers.